We've been going through the book of Exodus, and we've made it to Exodus chapter 31. And now we're here talking about the Sabbath day. The word Sabbath in the Hebrew actually means to rest, to take a break, to have an intermission, to take a time out. It's kind of like if you're playing a football game and you're wore out and you go, time out, and you're taking a Sabbath. You're taking a rest for just a moment. The actual word Sabbath is not actually mentioned in the Bible to Exodus chapter 16. But the idea comes from Genesis chapter 2. So this is what the Bible says. On the seventh day, God ended His work which He'd made, and He rested on the seventh day from all His work which He'd made. God blessed the seventh day, and He sanctified it, because that in it He had rested from all His work which God created and had made. So after actively creating for 6 days, the Bible says God took a break from creating and He took a rest from creating. It's not that God went, whew, I am wore out, I got to take a break. It's that He took a break from creation and from creating things. But the actual word or command to keep the Sabbath didn't appear in Exodus, to the book of Exodus. So in Exodus chapter 16, the Bible says that the children of Israel had been delivered from Egyptian slavery. They crossed through the Red Sea. The Red Sea was parted. They crossed on dry land. Y'all saw the movie, right? Okay. Cross on dry land. They go to the bitter waters of Marah. God makes them sweet waters. And then they come to a point in Exodus 16 where they begin to murmur. God, we're hungry. God, we want some food. What are you doing? Bring us out here to starve us to death out in the middle of the desert. So God begins to send them manna on the ground. And He says, you can go out every morning and pick up enough manna to eat. But here are the restrictions. Number one, don't go out there and get a big old tub full of manna and expect it to last till the next day and the next day, because it's not going to. You have enough just for one day. So you pick up enough for one day and you eat it, and you can boil it, or you can fry it, or you can make it into a cake, or you can eat it just regular. You can have manna casserole. You can have broiled manna. You can have baked manna. You can have all kinds of manna. But if you say, well, I'm going to keep it till Tuesday. I picked up a bunch on Monday, and I'm going to keep it till Tuesday. It's not going to be fit to eat. It's going to have little worms in it. And it's going to give off a real putrid stink, and it's going to smell horrible. But the exception was, on Friday, you go and get enough for 2 days, because on Saturday, the Sabbath day, there's not going to be any manna out there. So I'm going to put manna on the ground for 6 days, but on the seventh day, I will not put manna. Now, here's the catch. If you get enough for 2 days on Friday, on Saturday morning, it won't be putrid and it won't have little worms in it. That's amazing, isn't it? So this is what He said. This is that which the Lord hath said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake what you will bake, or seethe what you will seethe, and that which remaineth lay up over for you until it comes in the morning. So we know that the Sabbath was being practiced by the Jewish people prior to receiving the commandment in the Ten Commandments. Or prior to the law being established, they were already practicing keeping the Sabbath day. Needless to say, the Sabbath is defined in the fourth commandment when God gave the children of Israel their 10 commandments. So the fourth commandment, which is the longest commandment, is about the Sabbath. Let me read it to you. Exodus 28, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger which is within thy gates. In 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them. He rested the seventh day, wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So, God established the rule beyond a shadow of a doubt. I want you in this marriage contract, because that's what this is. Remember, God courted the children of Israel in the land of Egypt, showed them how strong He was. He was superior to all the other gods. He showed His prowess and His power by opening up the Red Sea. He showed his protection by destroying Pharaoh's army. He wooed them like a young man would woo a woman. And then he proposed to them. And he said, these are the conditions of our marriage. And the children of Israel said, all that you have said, we will do. And God gives them a marriage contract. And the 10 Commandments is that marriage contract. And part of that covenant, that contract, is to observe the Sabbath day. But it extended further in Levitical law. It was not just the seventh day, but God also said, you shall set aside the seventh year. So in other words, he says, for 6 years, you can work, you can plow your fields, you can prune your trees, you can do all that stuff. But in the seventh year, you're going to take a year of rest. You're going to let the land rest. You're not going to prune the trees. You're not going to plow the fields. And in fact, if anything comes up in the fields from previous times, you allow the poor to go out there and harvest all they want, and that allows them to get ahead. The Sabbath year was a restart. All debts were settled. All bond servants were set free. All sins were forgiven. It was a year of reset for all the folks to have a Sabbath year. Now, we know that the Jews never observed the Sabbath year. They said, listen, if I plow 6 years, I can plow the seventh year too. And they never observed that sabbatical year. And as a result, later on, the Babylonians came in and took the Jews off the land. And the reasoning was this: God said, because you would not allow the land to rest, I'll let it rest. I'll get you off of it. And he took them into exile for 70 years for the express purposes they did not observe the sabbatical year. We also know that if you take 7 of these 7-year periods, 7 times 7, and according to my John Tyler math, I think that's 49, then the 50th year became a Jubilee year, and it was a great celebration. So God had a purpose in that because it showed a pattern for future things to come. So let's look at what the Jewish Sabbath was. First of all, it was a sign, S-I-G-N. He was a sign. Listen to verse 13. Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, verily. Anytime you see a verily, that's almost like a behold, and it means of a truth. Of a truth, my Sabbath you shall keep. For it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord that does sanctify you. Now listen to me. Keeping the Sabbath, observing the first day of rest and worship did not save you. Coming to church on Sunday does not save you. Amen. Let me do that again. Keeping the Sabbath or going to church on Sunday does not save you. Amen. Very good. It's a sign that you've been saved. And that's exactly what God is telling them. He says, this is a sign that we are in a covenant relationship. It does not make you saved. It is a sign that you've been saved. The lost people would never give God a day of their week. They just keep right on their regular business. But those that loved the Lord gave him a day, obeyed his law, loved his commandments, and took a day to rest and to worship. Keeping the Sabbath was a regular weekly reminder that it was God that saved the Jews and that they did not save themselves. Listen again. That you may know that I am the Lord that does sanctify you. Listen, you coming to church, that's a sign to the whole world that you love the Lord. People have but to drive by Flint Baptist Church and look at that full parking lot and go, there's a lot of people that think a lot about Jesus at that place. I don't know all of them's heart. And just going to that church doesn't make them a Christian, but it's a sign that they are one. Your neighborhood knows it. They know when you pull out every Sunday morning. Every Sunday morning, about the same time, you back out and you go, and then you come back with donut smell on your breath, and they're going, they've been to church. They love the Lord. They're coming home to obey the 11th commandment and take a nap. He said, this is a sign that all the Canaanites and the rest of the world, they're going to go, you know, those Jews, brother, they won't sell you anything on Saturday. They won't buy anything on Saturday. They don't go to work on Saturday. They don't do anything on Saturday because they're worshiping. They go to the synagogue, and it was a sign that they had a relationship with God. Second thing is the Sabbath was consecrated. You shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you. God told the Jews, listen, the Sabbath day is a special day. God declared it to be holy, consecrated, set aside. As such, it was not to be counted as a common day. The other 6 days were common days, but not the Sabbath day. This was God's day. It was a holy day, and it was consecrated to be set aside. Just like the articles of furniture in the holy place were considered consecrated, holy. There was a golden pitcher that sat on the table of showbread. You wouldn't think about going and getting that pitcher and going, oh, here, son, just take it out there and play in the dirt with it, and dig a hole. No! That's consecrated. The Ark of the Covenant was holy. It was set aside. It's not like a normal piece of furniture. It was set aside by God. The table of showbread, the golden candlestick, those are consecrated things, holy things. We look at the Word of God and this is holy. It's not like every other book. This is a different book. That's why I guess the title has Holy Bible. It's consecrated. Growing up, my parents had bought the Encyclopedia Britannica. That was the internet back in our day. And when they bought the encyclopedias, they got for free a brand new Bible. Big old giant thing. I'm telling you, it's ginormous. If it fell on your head, it'd kill you. But it sat on the coffee table, and God help you if you set a cup of coffee on that Bible. My mother would have a fit. No. You can set a cup of coffee on any other book or any other magazine, but you do not set a cup of coffee on the Bible. Because she knew it was a special book. Now, you weren't going to go to hell if you put a cup of coffee on it, but she said, listen, that's a special book. It's different. It's not like other books. It's consecrated. And God said the same thing about the seventh day. The Sabbath was a covenant with God and the Jewish people. And you need to get this because you're going, well, why don't we observe the Sabbath? This is one of the reasons. Listen, verse 16, wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. This is a special covenant between God and the children of Israel. Okay? Now, covenant's like a contract, like a marriage relationship. Last night, I performed a marriage. In fact, I did 2 marriages yesterday. But I was working hard this weekend. In that, they made an arrangement with each other. They said in this marriage covenant, we promise to be faithful and true until death do we part. I got them in premarital counseling. I said, you know what that means, right? I said, sir, you can't go out on dates with any other women. That's part of this covenant relationship. You can't date anybody else. You're exclusive to her, and she's exclusive to you. I will be true and faithful till death do us part. If my wife is sick, I'm to take care of her in sickness and in health, in adversity and prosperity. She told me when we got married, she said, listen, what yours is mine and what's mine is mine. That's part of the covenant relationship. Might not be part of your covenant relationship, it's part of mine. But we share God's blessings with each other. The covenant that Israel made with God was to set aside 1 day a week. That was God's day. To have a date night where you did nothing but focus on God. That was His day. Spend time with God. Remember, keeping the covenant did not save a person or make them saved. It was a sign that they were saved. Not to keep the covenant, not to keep the Sabbath was a capital offense. God said on more than one occasion in our scripture today, He said, listen, that person that won't keep the Sabbath needs to be taken out and stoned. That's a capital offense. Now, I can't find a lot of places in the Bible where somebody missed Sunday school and they took them out and stoned them. I think there's some Baptists need a rock upside the head every now and then, but that's another sermon on another day. But God said, listen, this is so important. This is so important to your faith, to your walk, that you need to understand you're under penalty of death if you don't. Now, again, keeping the Sabbath did not save you, but it was a sign that you were saved. And now you've got some Jewish person over here going, I'm not going. I'm not going to go to synagogue. I'm not going to study the Bible. I'm going to keep on working 7 days a week, and I don't care what anybody thinks. Could it be that the sign was, if you kept the Sabbath, you seem to have a covenant relationship? If you did not keep the Sabbath, undoubtedly you didn't have a covenant relationship, and you were under the penalty of eternal death. So the death penalty was on you, but it was put on you by God and not by your society. God thought it was pretty serious that they were to keep that day. So what about Jesus? So Jesus comes along, and the Gospels are full of stories about Jesus worshiping at the temple or in synagogues on the Sabbath day. In fact, in Luke chapter 4, verse 16, this is what the Bible says. And he came to Nazareth where he'd been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read. So Jesus observed the Sabbath day and went and joined with his local synagogue and worshiped with them as was his custom. Did it every single Sabbath day. But he also caused a lot of commotion. And the reason being is because from the time of Moses receiving the 10 Commandments until the time of Jesus, the Jewish leaders had added over 1,500 laws to help define what the Sabbath was that were specific to the Sabbath. Because they asked the question, okay, if to work on the Sabbath day is against God's will, what do we consider work? So they began to define what work was. Some of the examples would be this. You could carry enough water for a swallow, but not a gulp. If you carried a gulp of water, which I don't even know what a gulp is, but if you carried a gulp of water, you were considered working. If you were a doctor and somebody was sick, you could go and help them not get worse, but you couldn't help them get better. So you can give them just enough medicine to keep them from dying, but not enough to make them feel better. Silly laws about the Sabbath. So Jesus came along and turned their religious world upside down. One Sabbath day, he goes up to a guy that's crippled, and he says, do you want to be healed? He says, I really do want to be healed. He says, then take up your bed and walk. So the man who'd been crippled, couldn't even stand up, got up and began to walk and picked up his bed and started walking away. And the Pharisees went, how dare you tell that person to work? You told him to carry his bed. That's more than he's allowed to carry. You made him work. You made him break the Sabbath. And you're going, but he was healed. On another occasion, Jesus sees a blind man that was blind from birth, and he spits on the ground and makes a little bit of clay with some dirt and spit, rubs it on the guy's eyes and says, I want you to go wash in the pool of Siloam. So the man is healed, miraculously healed. Nobody had ever seen anybody healed that had been blind from birth. So this was spectacular. And do you know what the Pharisees really focused on? Jesus was working by making clay because he spit on the ground and just made a little bit of paste to put on the guy's eye. Another time on a Sabbath day, they brought in a man, intentionally brought in a man with a withered hand and said, we're just going to see if you're going to heal him or not. And Jesus goes, are you kidding me? If there was an ox in the ditch, wouldn't you get your ox out of the ditch? Don't you see this man has an ox in the ditch? Wouldn't you help him out? That's what the Sabbath is all about, helping each other out, encouraging each other. So Jesus really turned them up on their head. And then he came up and said, don't you understand the Sabbath is not, man was not built for the Sabbath. The Sabbath is to benefit man. And that Jesus should know because he is the Lord of the Sabbath. So what about today? Why do we not typically worship on a Saturday? Instead, we worship on a Sunday. Well, historically, if you go back to history, Both Saturday and Sunday were used as days of rest and worship for the first 200 years of church history. We see Paul visiting synagogues on the Sabbath and trying to explain the gospel to the Jews on his many missionary journeys, but we also see him worshiping with churches on the first day of the week and gathering together with them. One example is Acts chapter 20, where he preached for so long that one guy fell asleep and fell out the window and died. And Paul was on the security team and went and resurrected him back to life by praying over him. Acts chapter 20, you need to read that. But basically, after 300 AD, the Roman Empire became Christianized, and they said, okay, to differentiate between the Jewish religion and the Christian religion, the Jews will worship Saturday, and Christians will celebrate the Lord's Day, which is what we celebrate, which is in celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So we celebrate the resurrection on the first day of the week when Jesus was resurrected versus the Sabbath day, the day of rest. But the principles remain the same. In fact, if you look in the New Testament, after the book of Acts, you only find the word Sabbath once. In all the Pauline epistles, in the epistles of John and James and Peter and the book of, you will not see Sabbath anywhere else except in one place, and that's in the book of Colossians. And listen to what Paul writes. He says, therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, or a Sabbath day. These are a shadow of things that are to come. The reality, however, is found in Christ. So he said, if your day to worship is Saturday or Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, okay, but get a day where you can meet with people and join together with a body of believers, that you can encourage each other, that you can hold each other accountable, that you can study the Word of God. I love what he writes in Romans. This is the NIV version. Listen to it. One man's faith allows him to eat everything, but another man whose faith is weak eats only vegetables. The man who eats everything must not look down on him who does not, and the man who does not eat everything must not condemn the man who does, for God has accepted him. Who are you to judge someone else's servant? To his own master he stands or falls, and he will stand, for the Lord is able to make him stand. So in other words, if you're going, listen, I just believe I should eat according to the Old Testament kosher laws. Okay, that's fine with me. It's not going to bother me. But don't look down on me because I eat a piece of bacon. He goes further. One man considers one day more sacred than the other. Another man considers every day alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. He who regards one day as special does so to the Lord. He who eats meat eats to the Lord, for he gives thanks to God. And he who abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives to himself alone. None of us dies to himself alone. If we live to the Lord. If we die, we also die to the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. If you're a police officer, we thank God we have police officers serving us on Sundays. We thank God the doctors don't all leave the hospitals and the nurses don't all leave the hospitals. They have to work on Sundays. We have people that have to work on Sunday. Okay, that's great, but find a day. God is worthy of a day. And if you can't, by all means, that's when we thank God for the live stream and where they can join us for worship and they can worship with us. But remember, God gave us this principle for our benefit. It's not for His, it's for our benefit that we take a day of rest. A day of the week where we stop and focus our attention on the Lord. If we work 7 days a week after week after week, God did not design you to be a robot or a workaholic. I wrote this down. If you work your fingers to the bone, you'll get bony fingers. Two things and we close. honestly, in 40 years of ministry, I've seen very few vibrant, growing, dynamic Christians that were not associated with the body of believers or church or a group to worship with on a regular basis, whether it be Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, to give them encouragement, to hold them accountable. You see, it was God that established the church, and He established it for a reason. As a part of the body of Christ, you may be an ear, or you may be a hand, or you may be a nose, or an eye. But it's part of a team. And you may say, oh, I tell you what, that football team, that quarterback can't win by himself. That quarterback has to have running backs, and he has to have a big old line in front of him and tight ends, and he has to have wide receivers and defensive linebackers and defensive linemen. And it takes the whole team working together, and we're all part of that team, amen? And that's what the church is. We are a body of believers coming together to serve the Lord, to hold each other accountable. I know this, when I was serving in the Navy, brother, when I went to Japan, I got a part of a church called Calvary Baptist Church. It was a Southern Baptist Church missionary that was right outside the base. I taught Sunday school for a little third grade class, and I loved it. I'm telling you, I did great. But brother, I went to the Philippines, and I did not find a church. I did not worship every Sunday. I was not held accountable. And just between me and you and the gatepost, I didn't do very good. I need that accountability. I need somebody every now and then to bark at me and tell me what's right and what's wrong, to explain the scriptures to me. God started the church. He didn't start the Kiwanis Club or the Lions Club or the YMCA. He started the church. And we're to be a part of the local church and be faithful to that church. Second thing is, to those that have to work or can't make it to church every Sunday, hey, I understand, but that principle still applies. You need to set aside that time. And we got folks at home right now that can't make it to church, but I'll guarantee you they set aside that time to worship, and you are their church family. And if all we ever do is inside the walls of this building, we're a pretty sad church. When we come, our focus should be on the Lord. So I will say this as your pastor. Don't just go through the motions, please. Don't just wake up on Sunday morning and go, oh yeah, I got to go to church. Will he hurry up? Boy, don't just go through the motions, please. Would you put some gusto into it? Would you prepare to come? We're meeting the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. We're coming to worship. We ought not get ready when we first walk through the door. We should have prepared the night before. I'll tell you this much. When I played football at John Tyler, we would have a Friday night game. Our coaches would call on Thursday night to our house to make sure we were home and getting ready for bed. They said, you better not be out catting around on Thursday night. We're getting ready for a game. And then we get out of school at 2:30. We go down to the field house, and we be in preparation, eating the correct food, going over playbooks, looking at films, preparing for the game time. You say, Brother Sam, why do you come up here on Saturday night? Because I'm preparing. It's not that I have to put the sermon together. It's that I'm on my face before God, that I'm getting my heart ready because I'm coming to worship. I'm coming to meet the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I want to hear from the Holy Spirit. I'm here to encourage people, to lift people up and to encourage them to love people. How sad it is for somebody to come and park, come through the door, find a seat, listen, get up, knock the door off the hinges, and never talk to anybody. That's not what church is. Church is where God leads you to somebody that's having a problem. And you pull them over and say, hey, can I pray with you? God laid a scripture on my heart I can share with you. The Bible says, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, such as the manner of some, but exhorting one another. and so much more as you see that day approaching. In fact, it even goes so far as to say, consider yourselves how to provoke one another unto love and unto good works. You should have a plan before you ever walk in the door of how you can encourage and lift people up. But whatever you do, would you put some gusto into it? If I hadn't worked up a sweat by the end of Sunday morning, I just don't think I've done my job. I want to put some gusto into it. I'm going to leave everything on the field. I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to be hoarse on Monday, and that's all right because I've given it my best. I don't want to just go through the motions. God deserves better than that. I don't want to just say, all right, I did my Sunday deal. That's fine. No. I want to be excited about coming. I want to be excited while I'm here. And almost sad that it's time to go home. This is God's day. Special day. And I've set it aside for the worship of my Lord because He deserves my time. He is worthy of my effort. He is worthy of me giving Him this moment where I focus on nothing but Him.